All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be the roll, don't roll Grift for week 2. In general, we're still on if you paid for it, you roll it out. And that's with the exception of like your wide receiver 3s, your flex type guys, the guys that you spent on outside of round 5. This is the type of time to go like, hey, did I see what I thought I was going to get week 1? If I didn't get that, like maybe I should start looking at some of those other guys that I stashed because, after round 5, I can let my hair down a little bit. And at that point, like the guys that I was getting at value, this is the type of time to start rolling them out if I saw what I was supposed to get week 1. Now, in relation to that, and I can bring this up real quick, I'll bring up the box score. So Keon Coleman, he looked like he was going to be that guy week 1, and then week 2, I think he had 1 target in this game with the Bills and the Dolphins. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, I think, here in a second. But in general, this is one of the things why it's so difficult to predict certain things in fantasy football is, never trust Thursday Night Football to begin with. And then the second thing, this is a game that appeared to have a high implied point total between the Bills and the Dolphins. And then Tua goes out there, throws 2 interceptions, one of them a pick 6, and then he gets knocked out of the game. And then the Buffalo Bills don't even have to do anything. I mean, 139 passing by Josh Allen. James Cook puts the team on his back. Dalton Kincaid didn't necessarily have to do anything, got kicked in the head. Khalil Shakur, now he looks like he's going to be the number 1 in the offense. And then for the Dolphins, besides the fact that Devin Achane is probably much, much better than we thought. We already thought he was like really good. Now, certain elite type seasons by Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle are now on the line when it comes down to all this stuff. So again, like in general, either the Bills are that good or this is just a Thursday night game. Like, again, that's why I like generally wouldn't start panicking until after week 3 when it comes down to rolling guys out that I spent on. And in the meantime, like, unless there's something like really big that I have to take advantage of, I'm not going to be messing around with my lineup too much and panicking. From a schedule standpoint, this is another one of those things, like some of those teams that we thought were going to be bad are going to be good. And some of those teams that we thought were going to be good are going to be bad. So those teams like the Panthers or the Titans, yeah, they may be bad. The Giants, they may be bad. We don't know. They just kind of confirmed what we thought they were going to be week 1. It doesn't necessarily mean this is going to remain consistent for week 2. So even with some of the weather games out there that look like they may be happening, I think like the Carolina and the Jacksonville game, they do look like there's going to be some weather involved with those games. Like I'm still not entirely concerned about that because, if I spent on guys, that's one of the things with fantasy football. If I spent on those guys, if they can't be matchup proof, if they can't be like, weather proof, then like I didn't actually spend on them. I spent on a flawed guy and I probably should have like allowed them to be someone else's problem. Like in general, a good rule of thumb is just play your best guys. And that's what I usually stick with my first 3 weeks. Like I am having to fight one of my co-managers over, let's not blow the team up because it didn't go the way that we wanted to week 1. Cause there's a lot of people out there didn't go the way that they wanted to. So that's how I look at my lineup. I'm going to roll those same guys out there and I'm not going to get overly impatient. Now, I was going to do the handcuff video and then what's going on with like the Dolphins and the Seahawks. And I was like, or even the 49ers, I was like, I'm going to wait another day and find out what goes on with the Dolphins. And I'm going to find out what goes on with the Seahawks. And then I can talk a little bit more about the handcuff. So the handcuff video is going to be in this video. I did it last night. I didn't like how it turned out. So I'm just going to do it again live right now. So in this case, like Jalen Wright, he did get active. Jeff Wilson got knocked out of the game. It doesn't look like the Jeff Wilson injury is going to be long-term. Jalen Wright in this game, I will say he had a couple carries that he does look a little bit special in this offense. But in general, like they like to use that speed and attack the edges. He had a first down called back on a penalty. So he does look like if he is the 1B in the offense, it would be special. I don't know how much outside of deeper leagues I would be holding on to him. I held on to him in both my leagues just to see what would happen in this game. Maybe worth holding on to him to find out what the injury status is going to be for Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert down the line, and also what's going to go on in the quarterback situation. After all that, like maybe again, I'm a little skittish when it comes to how the Dolphins used Achane last year and getting rid of my shares a little too early in this offense. Ray Davis in this game, he was at 31% snaps, 9 for 29. Another target for -1. Again, this is a little harder to break down. Ty Johnson was in the game. He had like a deep catch on like a third down, coming out of the backfield. So I don't necessarily think this is entirely like, hey, Ray Davis is going to eat into the backfield. He may still end up being the cuff long term, but James Cook had a red zone carry, had 3 total touchdowns. So like James Cook may end up being a little bit of a bell cow in this offense down the line. Still a little early to tell. And again, like trying to guess some of those game scripts that don't go the direction that we thought we were going to go, and then like what that's supposed to mean down the line. Even with Dalton Kincaid, I had to tell my co-manager last night, like, hey, this is a game that they should have been throwing all over the football field, and they didn't have to throw it all. So like, to sit there and go like, oh, Dalton Kincaid's a bust. Like from a fantasy football perspective, yeah, he's already a bust. But if I was spending like a tight end 5, tight end 6, and to see that he's on the field blocking was one of the things to see. Like, I don't know how often the Bills are just going to be able to blow out a team that they are supposed to get into a shootout with. That, like this, that's not necessarily something that we can predict on a week-to-week basis. The NFL is notorious for having those games that we think that we can predict, and they just don't go the direction we want. So Tua gets knocked out of the game. In this case, like I did see some troll posts on Twitter saying that he's going to retire. I don't think he is, but it's going to probably be a while before we find out. Did see that the Dolphins are expecting to bring in another quarterback. This definitely downgrades like all the pieces of this offense outside of A-Chain. I don't know what you're going to be able to get. If someone tries to speculate on a Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, until we find out who they're going to actually bring into this offense, what's going to go on? Like, definitely would get into the range of like, don't know if I would be playing any of those receivers. Even when it comes to like A-Chain, it gets a little dicey because now everybody can just like load that box up and dare them. And I did watch the game. I actually put out some effort. A-Chain, he can run within the tackles. The offense just generally didn't look like they could do that. And they had a lot of offensive line problems last night. So like, that would be something that I would be paying attention to down the line. And when it comes to that, and I already talked about Keon Coleman last night, 91% snaps, only 1 target. This was going to be the problem with the offense. Outside of Dalton Kincaid, who can still be fantasy viable because he's a tight end. If this was just generally going to be like a wide receiver by committee or a receiver by committee, and that's what it looks into, like they're just going to spread it around and they're just going to be better than everybody. And that's great for real football. We'll talk about like the Rams here in a second, but that's like bad for fantasy football when we get down to it. Moving on to a couple pieces of news that I saw during the week that I thought was like a little bit interesting. So I talked about this when it comes to like Blake Corum and Tucker Kraft. You get in that knife fight as a coach during a game and you totally screw up on your rotations. And I've done that. I've literally been the guy that's been on the sideline screwing up rotations, forgetting that you have guys that you want to get in there. You just get to the point where you're trying to win that football game. You forget about it. Well, we have the actual like news from both these guys. So you have like Sean McVay explaining that like, yeah, they expected to get Corum in the game, and then the game flow happened, and they don't trust him in pass protection. That's essentially what happened. So, I did talk to one of my co-managers. Like, he got dropped in my less competitive league. I dropped him in my main money league because I kind of guessed that the guys aren't going to stash him. Like, I still think that there's league winner on Corum if Kyron Williams goes down. The Rams are still going to have to figure out what they're going to do with their backfield and their receivers. So I would not advocate dropping a Blake Corum. Again, what are we trying to find out after week 1? Coaches being dumb, that's generally something that's par for the course week 1, especially when they get into this knife fight game and they throw the ball like 40 something times. They weren't expecting to do that. And then with the Packers, the OC there said like, oh yeah, we did not intend to have Tucker Kraft on the field like 90% of the time. They want to split the snaps between him and Luke Musgrave. So again, that'd be something I would be looking at as the season goes on, especially with these two guys. This is what I kind of thought was going to happen in the offseason. It would not surprise me if they roll Malik Willis and Tucker Kraft gets 90% snaps again, because he is the blocker of the two guys. Now, it would not surprise me that in certain game flows, Luke Musgrave is basically the wide receiver like 3 or 4 in the offense, and then Tucker Kraft barely sees the field. So it still may be a little bit difficult to guess what's going to go on the receivers outside of injuries, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So moving on to our cuffs, and this is what the main thing I was going to talk about. So Zach Charbonnet looks like right now Kenneth Walker is doubtful. Zach Charbonnet is going to roll in there. And I tried to put this conversation to bed last year with the Jerome Ford, roster your cuffs. I'm a big advocate of rostering your cuffs. I do play it like fast and loose at the beginning of the season. There are certain guys that I think are disproportionately valuable to their backfield. So again, when you look at your roster construction, I have 6 slots in both my leagues. Those guys that are out there, like, what are the chances that I'm ever going to use them? If it takes like 2 or 3 injuries for that guy to ever hit my lineup, he's probably not really that valuable to me. If I'm holding on to a guy because I want to see what happens, like you're looking at like a Lad McConkey or Keon Coleman or Brian Thomas Jr., something like that, those guys have value. I'm going to wait a couple weeks. Like, even if I'm holding on to like a Jonathan Brooks or TJ Hawkinson, I know what that guy is on my lineup. And the same thing with a cuff. If I have a Kenneth Walker and I'm holding on to Zach Charbonnet, I know that there is a possibility that roster spot will get used in a certain situation. Now, when it comes to like the game theory of fantasy football, I am trying to win my league. I want to sabotage my opponents. I do not want to give them the opportunity to win a league because of a mistake that I make by disproportionately allowing them to have my cuff, because I will use my cuff in a specific situation. They're just holding on to a lottery ticket. So that I am disproportionately affecting myself by not carrying my own cuff. And that it depends on the handful of guys that are actually cuff worthy. Outside of that, like, yeah, I'm not holding on to just anybody in my backfield. The other thing, like, when we get later in the season, those cuffs, like, those theoretical RB2s, like, they have value. There's no one left on the wire. Like, I only need to carry like one wide receiver 3, and that's like the backup for if one of my wide receivers goes down. Now, if I'm running like a 3 wide receiver comp, I'm gonna get into the point where like I'm probably gonna carry like a 4th wide receiver. But like, for the most part, I'm looking at unicorn tight ends, unicorn or elite quarterbacks, high upside lottery ticket running backs, and there's very few wide receiver 3s I want to carry on my roster. I was talking about this in the comments with somebody about Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. To me, they're the same guy. If Zay Flowers is just that like low A dot PPR guy, then the boom bust wide receiver 3 is the same guy to me. Like, the opportunity for that guy to win me a league versus give me a 40-degree day, like, they're very limited. So, when I look at some of these wide receivers that I'm going to be carrying, like, if they're that guy that I can just interchangeably throw on the wire and I can just talk about our good buddy, Alec Pierce right here. When I can go out and I know that there's guys like Alec Pierce that I can throw on my in my lineup on any given week and have a theoretical top 10 outcome, because they're just going to run like they're running wind sprints all game long, and if they catch 1 or 2 of those game, I have that spike week. Those guys are not worth rostering outside of like your really deep leagues where there's like only wide receiver 4s available on your wire. That's just how I roll. And again, like, the same process will win your league or lose your league. But in general, some of these cuffs, whether they're yours or mine or somebody else's, they're going to have more value. So like Zach Charbonnet, we knew ahead of time that if Kenneth Walker goes down, Zach Charbonnet is probably going to be like full bell cow. And that's what it looks like right now. That's why he should have been disproportionately valued by the Kenneth Walker owner. Now, everybody else in the league, like, yeah, they should have been scooping him up, because they're like, theoretically, I have the ability to either win a league, or what's a win worth. And if a win is worth like, holding on to a guy for 1 week rental, like that may have a certain amount of value at certain points in the season. Now, would I say this early that holding on to certain cuffs is necessary? No, because there are so many speculative guys that I want to see right now. Like, my benches have Lad McConkey and Brian Thomas Jr., those guys like on my bench. Like, those are the guys that I have. So I want to find out with those guys. And then now I'm trying to clear certain guys out. Like I have Calvin Ridley in 1 year league, and I'll get rid of him for a bag of chips. Like, I'll make a bad trade just to clear those roster spots if I could theoretically do that. So some of the other guys I want to talk about, like Rachaad White, yeah, I'm probably cuffing with Bucky Irvin right now. I don't know if Bucky Irvin may get close to standalone value, may lower the overall ceiling of Rachaad White, but right now I may be leaning towards cuffing Bucky Irving, especially after this week. Trey Benson may be a cuff if you're a James Conner owner. I talked about this. I do generally think that DeMercado will still eat into the backfield a little bit if James Conner goes down. So that I don't think you're going to get like the full bell cow with Trey Benson, but he may be worth cuffing if you're the James Conner owner. He's also probably a lottery ticket at this point. Like, as much as I probably dislike saying that, he probably is. Moving on to Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier is probably one of the more valuable cuffs. Like, definitely. The moment I pulled the trigger on Bijan, I would prioritize Tyler Algier in this backfield. Probably one of the more valuable lottery tickets if he's still available on the wire, versus like probably would just turn into a full bell cow if he gets the backfield. Tyrone Tracy, probably a little bit more of a stash. But if I was the Devin Singletary owner and I was actually rolling Devin Singletary in my lineup, I would be looking at Tyrone Tracy. Otherwise, like, he is a lottery ticket. Tank Bigsby, absolutely, it should probably be a handcuff at this point to the ETN owner. May have standalone value. So at that point, like after what we saw week one, definitely a lottery ticket if he's available. Now, I want to bring this up and I'll show you this one right here. There are going to be certain guys that I am or am not going to talk about today. So I don't want you to think that like this is like the definitive thing. Like, we've only seen week one. We don't necessarily know 100% what's going on, but like, these are the guys that I wanted to talk about. Braylon Allen. I don't know if I would necessarily be cuffing Brees right now with Braylon Allen. It's close. Probably still a lottery ticket at that point. I want to see one more week. I'm a little hesitant that this backfield might not turn into like a running back by committee with him and Isaiah Davis if Brees goes down, because Isaiah Davis was active and camp news was they liked Isaiah Davis. They love Braylon Allen. They like Isaiah Davis. That would be a problem. This is a little interesting. I don't know if I would be cuffing Sione Vaki if I was like the David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs owner. I do think he would end up being a lottery ticket to theoretically get 50% of the work if either of those backs go down. I just thought that was a little interesting. Antonio Gibson, probably more of a lottery ticket than a cuff, but if Antonio or if Ramondre goes down, I could definitely see Antonio Gibson being a bell cow. He did operate that like that when early in his career. That's what the Redskins kind of wanted to turn him into. So like, I could still see the Patriots theoretically doing that if he gets the chance. I wanted to talk more about this with the Texans. Dameon Pierce, even though he was a little nicked up, he may not play this week. So watching Cam Akers may end up being the handcuff to Joe Mixon. And that's something more to be monitoring if you're the Joe Mixon owner. If you're not the Joe Mixon owner and Joe Mixon goes down, I would be probably putting my money on Cam Akers at this point over everybody else that's going to go out and knife fight over Dameon Pierce. Ty Chandler may have standalone value in and of itself. This may be closer to a 50-50 split than we'd like to believe. But if I'm the Aaron Jones owner, yeah, maybe I'm cuffing at this point. Maybe not. Otherwise, like, that's about it. Like, he's close when it comes down to that. Khalil Herbert, 11% snaps. Like, he has been fantasy relevant before. 70% snaps when it comes to DeAndre Swift, but that offense looked really bad week one. I don't know if I'd be cuffing because of that, but this would be the guy I'd be knife fighting for week one. If Zach Moss goes down, like Chase Brown, if you're wondering about Chase Brown, I think we've already like learned what we need to learn about that. So like, outside of if someone dropped him and I'm the Zach Moss owner, I'd probably be snatching him up because of that reason. But again, this is really early. I still want those guys that have roads that we know, the story that we know over some of these guys when it comes down to it. But Zach Charbonnet, we're maybe looking at Braylon Allen. Tank Bigsby is definitely going to be a cuff. Tyler Algier is a cuff. Like Tyler Algier and maybe Tank Bigsby, Zach Charbonnet, those are going to be the big guys that are going to be the cuffs right now that like probably should be rostered by the owner of their guys that are out there. So just like Jerome Ford last year, Jerome Ford was one of the few guys that like was like an absolute cuff. Outside of maybe like you're looking at like Tyler Algier, maybe Braylon Allen, Tank Bigsby, Zach Charbonnet, even with Bucky Irvin, I wouldn't be surprised that they turn that into a little bit with like Sean Tucker. So I don't know if I would necessarily go like we're going to get full bell cow Bucky Irving if Rachaad White goes down. And again, some of these guys, if that guy goes down, like I would be really big on dropping a whole bunch of the fab on the opportunity versus this early carrying the roster spot. So again, Algier, definitely, I would be doing that. Tank Bigsby, probably. Braylon Allen, maybe. Zach Charbonnet, absolutely. And we can already see with Zach Charbonnet paying a certain amount of dividends when it comes to if you were the Kenneth Walker owner and you could go out and get Zach Charbonnet on that one. All right, moving on to the news. So Jordan Addison, he's out. Justin Fields, I got to move my water out of the way. Justin Fields, he is going to start again. So that is going to mean he's streamable this week because of that rushing upside. Kenneth Walker is right now doubtful. Drink of water. Marshawn Lloyd is questionable, so like this is more of a stash. If you're wondering why I don't have Marshawn Lloyd up there, I don't know what's going on in this backfield with like Wilson and Lloyd, but he is questionable. He could theoretically make that debut. We'll talk a little bit more about the Packers receivers here in a second, but Jaden Reed pops up with a calf slash shin. Jordan Love, now I guess is questionable to play this week from, theoretically IR to doubtful to questionable. That's going to be something to monitor. This is probably more with the toys than I would actually be rolling out Jordan Love at this point if I was interested in that. If Jordan Love plays, I probably would be rolling out my toys, especially with Jaden Reed theoretically being out. If Jordan Love doesn't play, I don't think Jaden Reed or any of the pass receivers I'd be really rolling out there this week. JMO, he is questionable. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about him here in a second. Malik Neighbors comes off the injury report. AJ Brown pops up today with a hamstring. I don't even know how I would necessarily attack that. Maybe you're looking at like Dotson. Definitely this is going to upgrade like Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, like Dotson. I don't even know if I'd be rolling. Depending on how deep your league is, like Johnny Wilson theoretically is a guy to be stashing at that point. Like this is interesting to be hearing about what comes on with this. So Jake Ferguson goes from like season ending to potential like short-term IR to maybe he's going to play to doubtful. So again, like Schoonmaker may be a 1 week rental at this point, but this is something to be monitoring if you're going to be doing all of that stuff. Josh Downs is questionable to play. This is going to affect like AD Mitchell more than anybody else, I think, at this point. Hollywood Brown, he may be done for the year. I'll just go out and say, so they put him on IR. They said the bone shifted in his chest. He has to go get surgery. And this is supposed to be like months. So like, I saw I got dropped in my main money league. Like there's no timetable on that. Josh Palmer pops up with a knee today. That was after limited with the knee. So he didn't practice. T. Higgins, doubtful again. Again, we're going to talk about like Yosivas here in a second. Keenan Allen, he did look questionable. Now it looks like he's going to, or doubtful. Now it looks like he's going to be questionable. Rome looked like he was going to be doubtful. Now it looks like he's going to be questionable today. So, theoretically, you could be looking at Rome rolling if Keenan Allen is out, maybe pushing him up in that range. And then if you didn't hear, first of all, Christian McCaffrey may be going on IR tomorrow with that calf Achilles. So like now we're talking about Jordan Mason, league winner at this point when it comes down to all that. I did see the conversation on Twitter about like, should you have known about Christian McCaffrey? And the answer to that, I'll just go out there and say like, maybe. I don't think there's a good answer to this. I talked about like staying away from guys that have question marks going into your drafts. But, and this is where I always talk about, like, you have to take a certain amount of risk to win your league. And if you took that risk because he tumbled in cost, I can understand that. It's probably a little bit harder to say, I took that risk, knowing that he was already injured. I don't know how I would do that, but like we are talking about a unicorn. And this is one of those things going back to like Jack Charbonnet and Jordan Mason. And I'm usually pretty good on going out and like getting your Jordan Mason shares, those type of guys. And I didn't think that Christian McCaffrey, there was enough of a risk based off what we heard. And I just didn't think that generally the guy that's not going to get pass receiving work is going to be worth carrying. So that was my mindset behind that. In this case, like, I don't think that the right play necessarily was to not draft Christian McCaffrey. I can see it going either way when it comes down to that. If you took that risk and it blew up on your face, like, like I'm trying to win my league, I'm not trying to come in third place. Like that's why the background is what the background is. Like, hey, if you're just trying to come in, have that little engine that could team and come in third place, more power to you. I'd rather get sixth place because I took my swing and I lost when it came down to that. All right, moving on. So these would be the guys that I would be rolling out there in my flex type wide receiver 3 spot, when it comes down to it. So with T. Higgins with the hamstring, Yosivas 100% snaps last week, 6 targets. I still would be tracking rolling him out there. Jaleel McLaughlin with Audric Estime going on IR and this being like 40 pass attempts, 5 targets to go along with 10 rush attempts and 35% snaps. Would not surprise me that he gets 50% snaps and he's in that range. did get red zone opportunities. So like if I have my Jaleel McLaughlin shares and I may be rolling out Jaleel McLaughlin as my RB2 in one league, like I would be rolling him out there in that flex spot. Lad McConkey. So he goes from a guy that I would be like, oh yeah, I'd feel pretty good rolling out Lad McConkey this week. And then the Josh Palmer news comes out, and I just don't know who he's going to be competing for when it comes to targets in this offense against Carolina. Now, the downside of this is I could also see the Chargers do not have to throw the football once this entire game against the Panthers. But like chasing 77 targets, and I would imagine the snap share is going to go up because of Quentin or Josh Palmer theoretically being out. I would be rolling Lad McConkey again, trying to predict who's going to be the number one on the waiver wire this week. J.K. Dobbins. Not going to be hyperbolic and say that like would not surprise me that J.K. Dobbins is a league winner. I actually have a trade request out on that one. You're looking at Jaden Daniels for J.K. Dobbins because I really need an RB2 on this one. So like I don't like J.K. Dobbins. I like the situation and I need an RB2. So like if I have J.K. Dobbins and I have that like flex position that I need to be filling, this is a J.K. Dobbins week. Brian Thomas, this is another one, 77% snaps, 4 receptions, expecting both those things could go up against Cleveland this week. So like if you're rolling, if you need that wide receiver 3, that flex guy, because of some of the other injury news that's out there, Jameson Williams, I would say that this is a week to be rolling out your Jameson Williams shares, except for that ankle. So you got to monitor that ahead of time. If you really are in a deeper league and you're throwing that dart, Xavier Leggett, 59% snaps, 7 targets in a game that I imagine that the Panthers will be behind for most of it. I have Dontavian Wicks up. This is more along the lines of if Jordan Love plays and Jaden Reed is out, all the Packers should be go at that point as your dart throws, trying to guess who's going to get the one. If one mouth is out of the way, then all of them become wide receiver 3 dart throws at that point. And then Jalen Naylor with Jordan Addison going out. Like if you're in deeper leagues and there's no one available on your wire, Jalen Naylor as that wide receiver 2 attached to like Sam Darnold behind Justin Jefferson would be that guy in that offense. So that's about what I got for the roll, don't roll grift in week 2. Basically, if you paid for it, roll it out. If they're injured, these are the guys that I would be tracking on to be putting in their spot. If your flexes and your wide receiver 3s, those type of guys disappointed, these would be the guys, like these are the guys that I would have been tracking on to stash in the first place. It's the week to be rolling them out if the guy's disappointed. Those specific guys disappointed in week 1. And roster your cuffs, you're looking at Charbonnet, maybe Braylon Allen. I can bring these guys back up real quick. Charbonnet, maybe Bucky Allen, Tyler Algier, Tank Bigsby, those type of guys I'd be looking at, and Tyrone Tracy as a stash when it comes down to that. So anyway, that's what I got for today, and I'll see you guys on Sunday with the sausage.